So fans of Mike Oldfield, particularly Mike Oldfield's sidelong instrumental albums, and fans of Robert Reed's Sanctuary and Ringmaster series may or may not have heard of Brett Lewis. Now, Brett Lewis released his debut album Novotopia in 2023, and this album follows the same format as those aforementioned albums. Now, on Novotopia, Brett plays the majority of the instruments himself, much like Mike Oldfield and Robert Reed do on their albums. And he's assisted here by Kate Lee on vocals, Jimmy Howlett on drums, Gary Aylesbrook on trumpet, and Pete Rowley on grand piano. The album was performed by Brett Lewis, engineered by Pete Rowley, and produced by Brett Lewis and Pete Rowley. So the whole album has a runtime of just shy of 45 minutes. And Novotopia Side 1, as it's called, as a nod to the early vinyl records of the day when Mike Oldfield did his first few albums, has a runtime of 24 minutes and 2 seconds. So Side 1 starts off a little bit like Mike Oldfield's Music of the Spheres, and that was a track called Harbinger on Mike Oldfield's album. But this only lasts a couple of minutes and then the piece goes off in its own direction. There's more prominent bass and piano comes into the mix, and also later on there's more drums and organ. So the whole thing ventures off in its own direction, and then at the end of several minutes there's a slight reprise to the earlier melody at the start. After that, there's a nice use of choral voices before giving way to a beautiful acoustic guitar and recorder part. And throughout the first part of this album, there's a nice blend between melodic passages, quiet, calmer moments, and more experimental, proggy moments. And there's a nice balance between the two, and each part flows into one another beautifully. It's nicely segued, as you would expect from this kind of instrumental album. And there's even stranger moments later on which are quite quirky and they work really well, such as you've got trumpets coming into the mix, giving the whole thing a kind of Ennio Morricone spaghetti western feel. And I just like how all these genres of music blend together and they all work in conjunction with each other. And Brett's done this beautifully. He's done this just as well as what Mike Oldfield did and what Robert Reed's doing now. So to conclude the first part, we have African drums with harmonised vocals, added to this guitars and shakers. Then we'll go into a lovely part with piano, bass, electric guitar, drums and synthesizer, and it's a nice tune to take us to the end. So we'll have a very strong ending to a very strong first part. So we'll move into part 2, which has a runtime of 19 minutes and 20 seconds. So for side 2 we'll have a very nice opening with spaghetti western style guitars, which are later joined by piano and electric, and then glockenspiel. And from there we'll go into a bluesier section with Blue Peter type synthesizers, and then we'll return with the piano and trumpets. About midway you have a really good rock section, which is soon accompanied by vocal harmonies. A lot of the rockier sections on this album differentiated from the earlier Mike Oldfield albums, which were a lot more acoustic and pastoral. Parts of this album are more akin to Mike Oldfield's 80s output, in particular 1980s QE2 album and 1982's 5 Miles Out album, and then later 1990's Amarok album, which are a lot more rockier than some of Mike Oldfield's other albums. And at the very end, I won't spoil it too much, but you've got 3 minutes rounding out the album which are truly beautiful. In the last 30 seconds you get a short reprise of the opening melody, so it kind of brings the album full circle. And it's such a wonderful way to end side two and also to end the entire album. I would also say the album is very well produced. Done a really good job in the production of the album. And also, Brett, much like Robert Reed, he's put his own personality into the music. He hasn't just straight up copied Mike Oldfield. He's got his own sounds, he's got his own styles. So I like that about Robert Reed and Brett Lewis. They are bringing more of their own personalities into the music. And I can honestly say there's not a bad moment on this album for me. I love it from start to finish. I can't find any particular faults with it. Obviously there'll be parts of the album I'll prefer over others, but as one long continuous listen, it's a superb album. So just to conclude, Brett Lewis's Novotopia album, which is itself a made-up word in the tradition of Amarok and Omadon, it proves that Brett has also got the skill and talent to create great instrumental albums alongside Mike Oldfield and Robert Reed. So Brett's currently working on his second album, Astronomia, and if it's as good as Novotopia, we're going to have another musician producing fine instrumental albums to look forward to. And to carry this music forward past Mike Oldfield's retirement. So again, if you're a fan of Mike Oldfield, particularly his side-long instrumental albums, and also Robert Reed's Sanctuary and Ringmaster series, do yourselves a favour and add Brett Lewis's Novotopia to your collection. I cannot recommend it enough. It's easily available on Bandcamp, both on download and in my preferred format, physical CD. So that was a review of Brett Lewis's Novotopia album. So I hope you enjoyed this review, and I hope you check out Brett Lewis's Novotopia because it's well worth it. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch up with you again soon.